Today, we are going to talk about one of the biggest, most dramatic intellectual shifts in modern history. We're looking at how Europe went from being absolutely convinced it had all the answers to being profoundly uncertain about, well, pretty much everything. And all this happened in the span of a single century. So just imagine for a second, a world where you believe, truly believe, that science and human reason could solve every single problem out there. Poverty, war, you name it. That wasn't some far-off fantasy. That was the dream that powered Europe through the 19th century. This is the story of how that rock-solid confidence just completely crumbled. And when you put the beginning of this period next to the end, the contrast is just staggering. We're going on a journey from a world of clear, objective, capital T truth to a world of relativism, uncertainty, and instability. This wasn't just a small change in thinking. It was a total earthquake in how people saw reality itself. Okay, so to really get how the mirror shattered, we first have to understand how it was built in the first place. Let's start at the beginning, with the foundation of it all, this incredible age of certainty. The big idea powering this era was something called positivism. Now, what does that mean? Well, simply put, it's the belief that if you can't see it, measure it, or test it with science, it's not real knowledge. This worldview promised there was one single objective truth for everything, almost like a perfect mirror, reflecting the world exactly as it was with no distortions. So positivism stood on some really powerful pillars. First, science was the only way to get to the truth. Second, you could apply that same rational scientific thinking to society to fix its problems. And third, humanity was on this incredible, unstoppable march forward. Progress was inevitable. Of course, this put it on a direct collision course with religion, which is based on faith and revelation, not microscopes and data. But, nothing that perfect ever seems to last. That shiny, rational mirror was about to get its first cracks. And funnily enough, they came from philosophy itself, which started this powerful revolt against the idea of pure reason. And then, this bombshell drops from the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. God is dead. Now, he wasn't saying this with a cheer. He was diagnosing what he saw as a major cultural event. He believed that science, reason, and just plain indifference had killed the idea of God as the ultimate anchor for truth and morality. So think about it. If God was the gold standard for truth, and he's dead, then what happens? Well, Nietzsche argued that objective truth kind of dies along with him. Suddenly, human will to power is unleashed from those old moral chains. Truth itself becomes relative. What's true for you might not be true for me. That single perfect mirror, it shatters into a million little pieces, each reflecting a different point of view. And Nietzsche wasn't some lone voice shouting into the void. You had other thinkers, guys like Henri Bergson and George Sorel, who were also pushing back against pure, cold logic. They were arguing that our instincts, our gut feelings, shared myths, and even raw violence were way more powerful in shaping history than some calm, rational debate. Okay, so the cracks are appearing in how we see the world. The next major shock to the system came from turning inward. The focus shifted from the world outside us to the chaotic, messy world inside the human mind. And the shift here is just massive. For a long time, the Enlightenment gave us this idea of the rational man, a person who is in the driver's seat, making conscious, logical choices, someone who could, with enough effort, know themselves completely. And then Sigmund Freud comes along and says, not so fast. He introduces the idea that we're actually driven by a subconscious mind, a hidden world of repressed desires, fears, and traumas that we're not even aware of. I mean, this just throws everything up in the air, right? It poses this deeply uncomfortable question. If we are all secretly being pushed and pulled by forces deep inside us that we don't even understand, is this whole idea of the rational man just a comforting illusion we tell ourselves? The very idea of being certain about yourself starts to crumble. But believe it or not, the final, most devastating blow, the one that really smashed the mirror for good, came from the one field that was supposed to be the bedrock of certainty itself, science. The nice, predictable, clockwork universe was about to break into a million pieces. See, for over 200 years, Newtonian physics was the ultimate comfort blanket. It painted a picture of a universe that ran like a perfect, predictable clock. Everything followed these unbreakable mathematical laws. You could know things, you could predict them. The world felt safe and secure. And then these two men show up and just flip the whole table over. First, Max Planck's work on quantum theory revealed that down at the tiniest subatomic level, reality wasn't predictable at all. It was chaotic, probabilistic, and just plain weird. And then Albert Einstein comes along with his theory of relativity and says that even basic things we take for granted, like space and time, aren't absolute, they're relative. They change depending on who's looking. So, what's the big takeaway here? It's mind-blowing. The universe is not a neat, tidy machine. The very building blocks of reality, the things that were supposed to be the most solid and certain of all, were now revealed to be fundamentally uncertain and strange. The mirror of science itself had cracked. So, philosophy is shaken, psychology is a mess, and now even physics is telling us that reality is uncertain. What was left after this demolition of the old world? Well, a new, much more fragmented world started to take shape in the aftermath. So you can really see the whole journey right here. The first part of the century was defined by this amazing confidence. The world felt understandable, fixable. But by the time we get to 1914, that core belief in a single universal truth has been systematically taken apart piece by piece and replaced with this deep sense of uncertainty and relativism. And look, this crisis of confidence wasn't just happening in dusty libraries and university labs. This feeling of intellectual instability, of the ground shifting under everyone's feet, perfectly mirrored the anxieties that were growing in the real world. The rise of aggressive militarism, intense colonial rivalries, and fervent nationalism that were all pushing Europe closer and closer to the edge. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. This all happened over 100 years ago, but the aftershocks are absolutely still with us. If that old mirror of a single objective truth really is shattered for good, what does that mean for us right now? What do we see when we try to make sense of our world by looking at all its scattered, fragmented pieces?